Mr. Mohammed Yunus, Resident Representative, UNDP, honorable members of the Parliament, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen joining us online from across Bhutan and beyond. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the national launch of UNDP's Global Human Development Report 2023-2024. I am Kunil Harden-Galson, National Consultant for Youth Portfolio with UNDP, and I am honored to be your MC. For today's event, we will have the pleasure of listening from visionary leaders and experts who will share their insights and perspectives on the report's key findings, themes, and ways forward. With this, I would like to invite Mr. Mohammed Yunus, UNDP Resident Representative, for his welcome remarks.
Honorable Limpo, Minister of Foreign Affairs and External Trade, Dashos, ARMS, distinguished guests, my colleagues from my UN family, ladies and gentlemen, and our dear students from various parts that they made it very early this morning. Kuzu Zampula, and good morning to all of you. It's with great pleasure that I welcome you all to the Bhutan launch of UNDP's Global Human Development Report 2023-2024. Allow me to start by sharing what the Human Development Report is all about. The Human Development Report, or HDR, as we call it with the abbreviation, is a UNDP's flagship publication. Launched for the first time in 1990, the HDR introduced a new approach for advancing human well-being, an approach that's about expanding the richness of human life rather than simply the richness of economy. And I cannot resist to mention something which Dashu Kinley once mentioned. One of my predecessors asked His Majesty, he says, what is this GNH? His Majesty the Fourth King. And he says, His Majesty responded, GNH is the ultimate status of human development. So there you see the connection between the human development and the philosophy of the gross national happiness. The HDRs not only look at complex development challenges, but also proposes practical pathways to navigate and address these challenges. They promote new ideas, advocate and influence policies to advance human development. So that is the goal and the purpose of the Human Development Reports. With this brief background on HDR, ladies and gentlemen, let me now bring into focus the HDR 2023-2024, titled, as you can see, Breaking the Gridlock, Reimagining Cooperation in Polarized World. That's the title of the Human Development Report 2023-2024 that we are launching in Bhutan today. Let me just highlight three key messages that's coming out from the Human Development Report. One, as the title suggests, we are facing a gridlock. Addressing shared global challenges such as inequality, climate change or climate crisis, pandemics, these all require collective action. No country can succeed in tackling them on its own. But increasing polarization pulls us apart and stops us from working together. As a result of this fragmentation, we often find ourselves at a gridlock, unable to agree collectively on some of these very important global agendas. This is the central theme of the report. 2, inequality is rising again. This is the finding of the report. After 20 years of steady decline, the gap between the rich and poor nations is rising again. Following steep decline in 2020 and 2021 due to pandemic, the global development progress started to rebound in 2022. That's the good news. But the sad news is that this progress is deeply uneven. Rich countries are experiencing record levels of human development, while a large fraction of the world's poorest countries remain below their pre-pandemic level. 3, the human toll of the gridlock, both well-being and human agency, are under threat. Recent outbreaks of violent conflicts in different parts of the world and their escalation towards longer term, and potentially larger scale conflicts signal a resurgence of threats that are spilling across countries. That is worrisome. The year 2022 observed the highest number of state-based conflicts since World War II, and the highest number of battle-related deaths since 1984, including increased civilian casualties and fatalities. In 2022, even before the outbreak of recent conflict in the Middle East, in Africa, 1.2 billion people, or 15% of the world population, were affected by conflicts in their vicinities. As the way forward, we can and must break the gridlock. The report proposes policy recommendations for breaking the current gridlock that is hindering our collective progress. These include overcoming political polarization, which is fueling inward-turning or inward-looking policies, sparkly at odds with the global cooperation needed to address urgent issues such as the climate risk, decarbonization of our economies, conflict and misuse of technologies. In essence, our ways forward to solve shared challenges hinge on reimagining international cooperation in a way that benefits all. Ladies and gentlemen, this report could have not been timelier. The release of the 2023-2024 report could not be timelier. It comes ahead of the United Nations Summit of the Future, that will take place in September, which also explores multilateral solutions for a better tomorrow. Speaking at the global launch of the HDR 2023-2024, Secretary General Guterres described the report as an important contribution towards shaping the summit of the future. We will hear shortly from Secretary General in his message. The summit of the future will bring world leaders to forge a new international consensus on how to deliver a better present and safeguard the future. The President of Singapore, who is also co-chair of the Human Development Report Advisory Board, was one of the speakers at the global launch of the HDR. He stressed that every country, regardless small or large, every country contribute towards reimagining international cooperation. Every country has its own voice and a role to play. Later in the second segment of the launch event, we will have a panel discussion that will explore how Bhutanese voices can contribute towards reinventing global cooperation or reimagining global cooperation in a way that will benefit all. Before I close, let me highlight to good news. First, the Human Development Report Index score of 0.681. Bhutan jumped 2 places up in 2022, ranking 125th out of 193 countries. This puts Bhutan in the medium development category. So congratulations to Bhutan. The second good news is that it's not all doom and gloom. As the Secretary General rightly put it, the report shows that the solutions to global problems are within our reach. So if we pull together, we can address these problems and challenges. So it is solvable, it's manageable, but it needs a political will. On this positive note, let me once again welcome and thank you all for joining us today. Your presence is a testament to our collective commitment towards advancing human development in a world that's characterized by growing development challenges and complexities. Thank you very much to all of you, and welcome once again in Tashidelik. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed, for setting the stage for today's event. As mentioned, we will now have a video message from the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres.
We are living in an age of polarization. Among communities and across regions, people are being driven apart by rising inequality, escalating conflicts, and record-breaking climate shocks. Misinformation and the breakdown of trust are tearing the social fabric and reducing space for meaningful public discourse. Divisions are deepening at a moment when cooperation is critical to our shared future. Cooperation to end conflicts, cooperation to tackle the climate crisis and advance the Sustainable Development Goals, and cooperation to agree on guardrails for digital technologies like artificial intelligence. This year's Human Development Report explores the roots of polarization and its devastating impact on sustainable development. It builds on previous analyses of people's feelings of insecurity and uncertainty, offering a path out of stalemate and division. It demonstrates that our best hope for the future is by combating divisive rhetoric and stressing the common ground that unites the vast majority of people everywhere. And it calls for the urgent expansion of our systems of international cooperation so that they can deliver on people's priorities: sustainable development, a clean environment, a livable planet, safety, security, and dignity for all. September Summit of the Future will consider exactly those questions. As we prepare for the summit, I recommend the Human Development Report as an important contribution. It shows that solutions to global problems are within our grasp by reimagining cooperation and uniting for a better world. Thank you.
Now, may I have the pleasure of inviting our guest of honor, Your Excellency Linpo Dien Dungel, for your keynote address.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Muhammad Yunus, the resident representative of UNDP, distinguished participants from Royal Government of Bhutan, moderator for the panel discussion, colleagues from the United Nations in Bhutan, my dear students from various schools here in and around Thimphu, ladies and gentlemen. It's with great pleasure that I stand here today to address the gathering on the national launch of the latest edition of the Human Development Report on Bhutan. On behalf of the Royal Government of Bhutan, allow me to convey my sincere congratulations to UNDP on the timely launch of the report. We extend our sincere gratitude to the United Nations Development Program here in Bhutan and around the world for their steadfast dedication to promoting human progress and well-being. Let me also take this opportunity to extend my good wishes to Mr. Achim Steiner, the UNDP administrator. Dear friends, it was a landmark moment when the first Human Development Report was launched in 1990, making it clear that human development is about expanding the richness of human life rather than simply the richness of the economy. The principles of human development resonate strongly with Bhutan, which, under the guidance of our visionary kings, has always taken a holistic approach to development that has as its core the well-being and happiness of our people here in Bhutan. Bhutan has made significant strides in social sectors such as health and education since our first five-year plan in 1961. Bhutan's 13th five-year plan, which aims to achieve a healthy, prosperous, and secure Bhutan by 2034, places a significant emphasis on social development, with the social cluster forming one of the four key clusters. Reports like the UNDP's Human Development Reports have served as a powerful advocacy tool, promoting new ideas and influencing policy changes to advance human development globally. Bhutan will continue to extend its full support to the report and take keen interest in its findings and recommendations. This year's Human Development Report, under the theme Breaking the Gridlock, Reimagining Cooperation in a Polarized World, is timely as the world navigates through unprecedented global crises, ranging from socio-economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, declining economic growth, triple planetary crisis, and widening inequalities, among others. The report finds that rich countries are experiencing record high levels of human development, while half of the world's poorest countries remain below the pre-crisis level of progress. The increasing fragmentation, polarization, and growing inequity we witness in the world today only serves as an urgent call for strengthening multilateralism, for greater political resolve, solidarity, and compassion. We just heard our Secretary General in his address saying that human development, how important the Human Development Report is and how it is going to impact in our further discussions that is going to happen sometimes in September this year. Mr. Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, has time and again emphasized the urgent need to modernize the multilateral system to address contemporary issues. In his address on our common agenda, That's a report. The UN Secretary General has called for a summit of the future to forge a new global consensus on readying ourselves for a future that is rife and with risks, but also with opportunities. It recognizes the need for a multilateral system that is fit for the future, ready to address the political, economic, and environmental and technological changes in the world, and with the agility to adapt to an uncertain future. Bhutan looks forward the convening of the Summit of the Future and adoption of the Pact of the Future in September 2024, that is later this year, with the hope of a better future for all of us. Bhutan recognizes that our journey towards sustainable development cannot be traversed alone. Multilateralism is indispensable to address today's complex global challenges that impacts all nations, big and small. It is only through continued engagement, dialogue, and collaboration among all its stakeholders, from government and civil society to the private sector and international organizations, that we overcome these challenges. Let us now seize this moment to reaffirm our collective resolve to advance human development within our own areas. By fostering partnerships built on trust, mutual respect, and shared values, we can leverage our collective strengths to effect meaningful change and create a world where every individual has the opportunity to thrive. Bhutan, on its part, remains steadfast in its commitment to multilateralism and stands ready to actively contribute to global efforts aimed at breaking the gridlock and forging a path towards a more harmonious, prosperous, and inclusive world. I wish this event a grand success. Thank you, and Tashtele.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your insightful and inspiring words. And now, to learn more about the key findings of the HDR, I would like to invite Mr. Krishit Alam, Deputy Resident Representative of UNDP, and Ms. Thiring Choden, Head of Exploration with UNDP's Accelerator Lab.
Is this working, my mic? No, I don't need that one. Thiring? Good morning. Mohammed, our resident representative, and Honorable Foreign Minister has put the context so well, so I don't need to get there. Myself and Thiring is our in-house data scientist. She sits in our innovation lab, which looks at current and future challenges. We will be working and taking you through the key findings of the report. And the difficult part will be taken by Sharing. And if there is any difficult question, ask her, not me. Okay, so let me just begin with a quote that will set or strengthen the context set by our Foreign Minister and Mohammed Yunus. A quote, "Tell me how to stay alive and thrive in the world that clearly doesn't care about us having a future," unquote. This is a quote what doctors reports hearing from children around the world and young people more and more. And we have so much going for us. Our generation have the greatest wealth and technology on our disposal. But the question is why we're so stuck And how do we get unstuck without resorting cheaply to violence and insecurity? These are the questions that motivated 2023-24 Human Development Report. Before we start the key findings, we have an introductory explanatory video. I will ask my colleague to run that. Sering? Okay.
The human development path has shifted downwards, and these losses may be permanent, with the weakest countries being left behind after decades of catching up. Our inability to manage shared global challenges like climate change and pandemics not only threatens our well-being, but also sows division, fear, and conflict around the world. No country alone can tackle challenges that spill across borders, whether a virus or a warming planet. And yet, we're stuck in gridlock, with paralyzing polarization spreading everywhere. We cannot break this gridlock by turning inwards. We need to reimagine how we cooperate. We can start by building an institutional architecture that enhances the provision of global public goods, helping us to see the world as more than a zero-sum game and to come together on issues where it truly matters. We can help ease polarization by fighting misperceptions that keep us apart, and by giving people the means to feel more in control of their lives. We don't have to be swept up in a whirlwind of problems, sinking deeper with each disaster. We must do better. We owe it to ourselves, to each other, and to the planet.
Next slide, please. Now we're talking about planetary crisis. If you could recall, in 2020, UNDP launched its Human Development Report titled Anthropocene. Very important for us to understand why Anthropocene, and that the massive technological change that we're going through are important to understand the gridlock. I hope our students would understand the meaning of gridlock. In a simple term, gridlock means traffic jam that we experience in bigger cities, smaller cities. In Bhutan, we experience at times at the point of traffic where cars are coming from different directions and then we get locked. So this report will talk about how planetary forces, social forces, economic forces, and also human mental health and anxiety are all coming together in creating that gridlock. And why this report is important today, and Mohammed has very clearly outlined, I just want to highlight a few points. Half of the world population will go through election this year. That's very important, and that is the time when people will make their choice and choice of their future leaders. And those answers would be asked by the people who will go for the voting or polling centers. But polarization, lack of trust, contributing to heightened insecurity, and the gridlock, traffic jam, in cooperation. So we would be looking for, people would be looking for those solutions. And what is our paths? And as we heard, we need to reimagine a world of our shared and common humanity, and how to unlock the traffic jam that we have. So I'll hand over Sering to take you through some of the key findings, first part of the report, then we'll talk about what are the solutions. Sering, over to you.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Krushit. Good morning, La, Honorable Lempo, Excellencies, Head of Agencies, Head of UN, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. I will be giving a very broad overview of the 2023-2024 Global Human Development Index report, focusing mainly on the key insights of the Human Development Index and how the world has recovered. As you can see from our past reports, the Global Human Development Index, for the first time ever, dropped in 2020 and 2021. That was because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic turmoil. The good news is that according to the 2023-2024 Global Human Development Report, the Global Human Development Index for 2022 has rebounded back to the pre-pandemic value and is now is projected to reach at a higher level in 2023. So that is good news. All the components of the Human Development Index, that is health, education, and income, has surpassed their 2019 value. But the sad news is that the global human development path, as you can see from the chart here, has shifted downwards. And the Global Human Development Index today is below the pre-2019 HDI trend. And this loss may become permanent. Next slide, please. What is more important to understand is that the global HDI value masks or hides some disturbing divergence across country. What is more important to understand that the global HDI index, even though they have rebounded back to the 2019 value, the inequality is rising. The recovery is uneven. And when I say the recovery is uneven, I mean two things. The recovery is unequal and the recovery is incomplete. So let me first explain as to how the recovery is unequal. The recovery is unequal because the countries, the poorest countries, are left behind. If you look at this chart on the left-hand side, we see that all the countries under OECD have recovered from the 2020-2021 reversal of human development. But only 49% of the least developed countries were able to do so. This means that the poorest countries are left behind. The inequality is rising. If you look at this graph, after decades of progress of reducing inequality, we see that the inequality, which is measured in terms of the difference between the HDI value of the high and low category, has started to increase from 2020. And what does that mean? The gap between the very high HDI country and the low HDI country has suddenly started to increase from 2020. So we see that even though globally there is a development progress, the global HDI has started to go back to the pre-pandemic value. The inequality is unequal, and the poorest and the weakest of our international community are left behind. Next slide, please. Now let us understand how the recovery is incomplete. The recovery is incomplete because in 2023, more than a quarter of the countries across the world is projected to have a value below its 2019 value. If you look at this graph here, we can see that regionally, for all the regions, the actual HDI value is below its 2019 trend. So the recovery, even though it's there, it's incomplete. Next slide, please. We have understood that globally we are doing well in the sense that we have rebounded back to the 2019 value. But we have also understood that the inequality is rising. The recovery is uneven. Let us take an example of the stress that people feel, because stress is one important consideration when we want to measure the status of human development. And if you look at the chart here, you can clearly see that the distress that people are feeling is increasing for some time over most of the countries and across the different human development groups. And the distress that the people are feeling has been increasing even before COVID. Because if you look at the data points, it's the change of percentage of people reporting experiencing stress between 2011 and 2019. So the distress that people are feeling has been increasing even before COVID-19. even before the traditional indicator of measuring human development and poverty reduction has been progressing well. So clearly we are missing some things. This graph poses this question. We are clearly missing some things. What are those things? One of the things is the ability to have that sense of control over our lives, the sense of control over our collective future, because we all live in a world that is highly complex, that is interdependent. And I now hand it over to Krushit to help us understand what are those missing things. What can be done, what are the impact of those things, and what can be done so that we can reimagine cooperation and we can overcome the challenges that we are being faced. Over to you.
Sering, thank you. I just wanted to highlight 2 points here. One is the disparity or uneven recovery of human development, or HDI, is between the countries, is uneven. But if you go deeper, within country, there are people who are yet to recover. If you read the report, you will get the sense of uncertainty among the people, and that reflects very well here how people also experiences stress of and anxiety of their today and their future. Second point, I would also encourage all of you to look at our special report in 2022, am I right? That is on human insecurity. 6 out of 7 people in the world today are uncertain about their future, their jobs, their food, their security, their children's security. The young people are worried about their future, and we relate that with uneven recovery and the impact of COVID and all the challenges, anthropocenic challenges. I will explain Anthropocene later, don't worry. Anthropocenic challenges, climate change, environmental degradation, biodiversity loss, and technology, superhighway. These are all creating anxiety for the future. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, this one is a very interesting slide, but I have little to say about this one. This graph is a Twitter data set. It highlights how connected we are today. Let's build our hope from there. It is not just we're connected, but we're interdependent. Let me highlight few statistics. One is no country is self-sufficient. No society is self-sufficient. We're dependent on each other. 25% of major goods that we consume today are coming from fewer regions, fewer countries. That means there is a concentration. 95% people within our planet are connected through digitization or mobile, at least a mobile network, which is a great hope. And almost 40%, as I said, of the global trades are connected only fewer countries. Then let's talk about Anthropocene, why that is important. Because all the problem that we talk about, Anthropocene is, if you look at our geological time scale, over last 500 million years, we have 3 major geological epoch we call geological time scale. And what we have learned that since the Industrial Revolution, there is a different kind of geological epoch that was highlighted in our previous Human Development Report. In previous geological epoch is the natural force that was altering the planets. If you talk about Himalayan, if you talk about the desert, if you talk about the river and sea and atmosphere, they're all changes over time, but through a planetary forces, planet has its own force. But since the Industrial Revolution in 1770, the humans started changing the planet by digging more, mining, creating atomic bomb. So that is the human era that is called Anthropocene. That's the new era. So Anthropocene is also bringing us together, not in a good way, in a bad way, because climate change doesn't need any any passport because it's a border. It will, if there is a cyclone, it will hit Bay of Bengal and hit Bangladesh, hit India, Nepal, Bhutan. So there is no boundary. Let's think about all the genetic diseases. We just experienced COVID-19. Didn't need any boundaries. So what we're increasingly experiencing is that we are connected and we're also interdependent. Let's go to that is a source of anxiety, but more about source of reimagining our future. This graph is talking about the human toll of the gridlock. If we don't work together and solve the gridlock, human toll, if you look at this graph, one is the war-related mortality. War mortality is the record high since World War II, is reaching this year is almost 100,000 people lost their life. And if you look at the people who are out-migrated, forcibly migrated, and Mohammed and I are very fan of a music piece about the migration, we should play some point of time, that in 1995, the people who are displaced or migrated because of the war was below 50,000. From there, it shoot up to more than 100 million people. So that's the human cost and is unavoidable. If we understand the root cause, and it relates to the anxiety, it's related to the polarization, and that is causing the anxiety in the world and violent conflict, and this is the human toll. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is an interesting graph. Still, it's a sense of hope and bit of paradox as well. It talks about that almost 100% people, let me just look at the data, 100% people in the world still believe that democracy will solve the problem. And they have faith on democracy. However, what is more important, and ironically, they would support the leaders at time, and it will find at least 60% of the cases, they will support the leaders who will undermine democratic processes, who will bypass the parliament. And therefore, what is this graph is saying, still I have a faith, but still people is moving towards populism. That is another gridlock, and also another threat and dent to the multilateral world and the shared humanity we're talking about. Next slide, please. Okay, this is very important slide. We talked about anxiety, which is connected to Anthropocene, all the climatic and environmental problem, all the technological challenges we talked about, and then finally, we talked about uneven recovery and inequality, rising inequality, that creating anxiety. So what does this tell in terms of data? So the survey, the World Value Survey, is suggesting that the people, 5 out of 10, half of the global population, think they don't have control over their own lives. It's very worrisome. 7 out of 10 people, the 68% people think they can influence the political decision or decision of their leaders. So people are in anxiety, inequality. They're also feeling they don't have control, how to influence. And that gives rise, if I go to the previous slide, is polarized world. Polarization at the societal level, at the global level, because of the rise of populism, and which is, as I said earlier, is a threat to our multilateral values. Let's go to the next slide, Ogun. Okay, this slide, I will not spend a lot of time. Perceived gap of agency. When you talk about agency, we think is a business company. That's the easiest way to understand. But in human development, agency is referring to people's ability to influence. And 2/3 of the countries show increase in polarization. Since people are losing their control over their life as well as their system, therefore, people are feeling that they are not part of the agency or agent of change. And that is across all human development category. Low human development category is also increasing, medium also increasing, and high also increasing. I will not go into detail of the geographical division you can read in the report. Let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah. This is an interesting slide. Thanks, Mohammed. We had a lot of conversation on that particular slide. What this slide is talking about? It is talking about, I will start from the green side, don't look at the red side first, because our sense of hope is there. 69% of the people, if you look at how hope is building up, that we have interdependent world, we have people want to have more control over their life and want to become an agent of change, then people also want to contribute. 60%, nearly 70%, 2/3 of the world population, they think they will contribute financially for the climate cause. And there could be many other reasons. So people are willing to contribute, and we have created a shared humanity, and there is a sense that people think they are connected, and they can resolve their future, or they can shape their future. This slide is a bit of pessimistic, but it can be analyzed in a different way. That 43% people think other will do. That's the psychological impact. There could be many other explanations, but if you look at World Risk Report of this year, which was launched in Davos, misinformation is number one risk. The way the report is categorized, they don't consider climate change as risk anymore because it's a default and organized risk. So misinformation, disinformation, lack of agency, those all contribute that people think that somebody else will do. I'm not. Therefore, if 70% people think, we can also convert the other group of people to contribute and be part of the change. Next slide, please. This slide is talking about 21st century architecture. So I need to look at my note, if you allow me 2 minutes, because what I wanted to the way I wanted to summarize what we said so far. Just give me a second. So there are 3 points that we started from Mohammed to our Honorable Foreign Minister. Okay, so 3 points. One is that we are interdependent. Okay, so we're now charting a course, and I'm close to the end of the presentation. One is all the changes that Sering has outlined, from uneven recovery within the society and between the countries. We talked about technology, we talked about environmental problem. There is winner and loser. The key point Mohammed talked about, the President of Singapore, who is also co-chair of the Human Development Advisory Board, he made a point. He said, if we keep this loser in losing side, we will all lose. That's the very important message that is emerging from there. So I quote from Mr. Thorman. Second point is, since we're interconnected, so we have wealth and technology, another world is possible. And third point is about human security, that we need to redefine human security. Remember how many people died in COVID? I was looking at the stat this morning, 6.8 million people. We didn't need any tank. Did we need any ballistic missile? We need something else. We needed vaccine. We needed more hospital. So redefining the human security from traditional territorial security to broader human security is very, very important. From there are 3 key messages. There are 3 points the report is charting will solve our gridlock or traffic jam. Number 1, go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. No, go back. Yeah, go back. Go next slide. Yes, keep it here. Sorry. One is investing on people's agency, giving people a sense of hope that they can control their life, they can influence the decisions made by their leaders. That's one. Empowering, investing, taking care of their anxiety for the future, uncertainty for the job. Number two is talking about interconnected world. Just give me a moment at time, without note I cannot talk because of probably I'm getting older. Okay, so second point is all about creating and building from hope that we are in an interdependent, interconnected. We have the greatest wealth and we can have a new world. We can reimagine a new path out of the gridlock. The final point, that's my favorite point. If you look at traditionally, the global cooperation was based on two major trends or two major strands. One is humanitarian aid and other is the international development cooperation. What this report is suggesting, a new area of cooperation or new thread of cooperation, that is supply of global public goods. Because mostly all the goods that we need are either private goods. The difference between public goods and private goods for our student, public goods you can exclude other people. If you can't pay, vaccine for example, then you don't get it. You know that happened during the COVID time. In contrast, public goods, let me give you a simple example. Traffic light. You can't exclude other people. You can say, oh, you didn't pay, you don't come here. Traffic light is a public goods. So we need to look at how to increase the supply of public goods, as Honorable Foreign Minister as well as Mohammed mentioned. How do we do that? Each country has their unique ability to contribute, to increase production, increase and supply of public goods. Which are those? For example, if we're talking about climate change, how do we get more money? We have trillions of dollars sitting there for energy transition, adaptation, the vaccine, new health system. So we need to collectively work together beyond national boundary, beyond national interest, to produce and supply those public goods. I hope this report will help you to reimagine a future for our shared community, for us today, as well as for our future generation and their generation. With that note, Sering and I thank you both.
Reimagining cooperation to unite for a better world. Message loud and clear. Thank you, Mr. Khurshid and Ms. Sring, for walking us through the key findings of the HDR. Now, for the much anticipated program, I would like to invite Honorable Linpo, Mr. Mohammed Yunus, and UN Resident Coordinator, Ms. Carla Robin Hershey, on the stage to launch the report. Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Mohammed and Ms. Carla. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change has been one of the recurring themes of the Human Development Reports in recent years. The HDR 2023-2024 talks about how our current gridlock is preventing us from coming together to tackle the global climate crisis, an existential threat facing humanity. The clock is ticking. We cannot ignore climate change any longer. We must end our excuses and act now to save our planet, unless we want to be another species facing extinction. These are not my words, but of Frankie the Dino. Let's hear more from our climate champion, Frankie.
You okay? You need a minute? Cool. Okay. Listen up, people. I know a thing or two about extinction. And let me tell you, and you'd kind of think this would be obvious, going extinct is a bad thing. And driving yourselves extinct? In 70 million years, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. At least we had an asteroid. What's your excuse? You're headed for a climate disaster, and yet every year governments spend hundreds of billions of public funds on fossil fuel subsidies. Imagine if we had spent hundreds of billions per year subsidizing giant meteors. That's what you're doing right now. Think of all the other things you could do with that money. Around the world, people are living in poverty. Don't you think helping them would make more sense than, I don't know, paying for the demise of your entire species? Let me be real for a second. You've got a huge opportunity right now. As you rebuild your economies and bounce back from this pandemic, this is humanity's big chance. So here's my wild idea. Don't choose extinction. Save your species before it's too late. It's time for you humans to stop making excuses and start making changes. Thank you.
Don't choose extinction. What a powerful message. I would now like to invite Ms. Carla Robin Hershey, UN Resident Coordinator, for the closing remarks.
Gazampala. Honorable Limpo, Minister of Foreign Affairs and External Trade. It's a real honor to have you with us today. And I would also like to, of course, acknowledge Mohammed Yunus, the resident representative of UNDP, for organizing this event and launching the report from UNDP. And before I start, I would also like to acknowledge His Excellency, the Ambassador of Kuwait, my colleagues, the head of UN agencies from WFP, UNICEF, UNFPA, also with us today. We have our IFI colleagues, Shamit from ADB, Adama from the World Bank. And I would be remiss if I did not mention all of the young people who have joined us today from various universities, whether it be the Royal College, the Law School, CGIT, and others. We very much appreciate your presence. And I'd also like to acknowledge that we have a wealth of wisdom in this room and experience, along with the youth who are going to be those that emerge to make decisions about the future we're going to have, not only in Bhutan, but across the globe. So again, on behalf of the United Nations and UNDP, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to Honorable Limpo and to everybody joining us today for this launch. And thank you to Krishit and to Shearing as well for the presentation that you just made, highlighting the main points of the report. I'd like to reiterate the congratulations to Bhutan in its advancement from jumping up 2 spaces from 127 to 125 and 22. Every step of progress, while it seems small right now, for those of us that have been in the room for over 50 years observing a lot of the development in this country, we begin to see the extraordinary amount of change that we've been able to do together. As mentioned by previous speakers, challenges unlike uneven development, progress, escalating inequality, and deepening political polarization, the Human Development Report underscores the urgent need to address these issues and to emphasize the pivotal role of multilateralism in navigating the complexities of our interconnected world. We indeed live in an era where the actions of one nation can reverberate across borders, affecting the lives of people globally. The increasing interdependence between nations, fueled by technological advances and environmental changes, highlights again the importance of collaborative efforts in tracking these shared challenges and tackling them together. As we look to the future, it is imperative that we break the gridlock that has been discussed so much this morning and that is actually hindering our ability to progress. The cost of inaction is significant, posing threats to our collective well-being and security as presented in the presentation. Embracing a protectionist approach is not the solution to the complex issues that we face today, such as climate change and digital regulations. Instead, today, we need to renew our commitment to international cooperation and collective action for a prosperous shared future. In order for us to close the gap between progress made until 2019 and being able to make up some of the losses that we have now learned about today, this collaborative effort is going to be extremely important. In today's rapidly evolving global landscape, the principles of multilateralism have never been more pertinent. As we navigate the complexities of the 21st century characterized by interconnectivity and interconnected challenges, as well as opportunities, the Human Development Index report serves as a guide and a pathway towards the more equitable and sustainable future. And I'm looking around the room at the young people that will have to take a lot of these decisions forward for the best of humanity and for the citizens of Bhutan. The report's findings remind us that the imperative to prioritize human well-being and sustainable development in all of our work, it's not just a must or a given. It really needs to be part and parcel of everything that we decide to do each and every day. It underscores the importance of fostering inclusive societies, promoting equality, and safeguarding our planet for future generations. The Human Development Report not only provides a comprehensive assessment of our progress towards human development, but also underscores the urgent needs, again, for collective action to address the pressing issues of our time, with its focus on multilateralism and the Summit of the Future, which I believe Mohammed also mentioned. It's scheduled to take place this year in September in New York. And the report highlights the imperative for nations to come together, transcending our boundaries and differences to tackle the shared challenges. And the Summit of the Future is just one among many opportunities coming up for all member states to come together to find solutions on the way forward. So as we prepare for this summit, we also want to recognize the interconnectedness of our own world and the necessity to collaborate for collaborative efforts in shaping a more prosperous and inclusive future for all. The summit represents an opportunity to reimagine our global cooperation and frameworks, harness the collective wisdom and resources of nations to add issues such as climate change, inequality, and technological advances to the list of ideas that we must address. Moreover, as we reflect on the Secretary General's policy and his video note to us, we are reminded of the urgent need to address pressing global issues from climate change to poverty eradication through a concerted multilateral effort. The briefs served to illuminate a path towards more than just equitable and sustainable development, but beyond. On behalf of the United Nations in Bhutan, I am very much reminded and feel the warmth of the people in the room and the citizens who are behind the commitment in this country that has dedicated so much to sustainable development. And all the stakeholders here today are going to play a key role going forward, whether or not it's the Summit of the Future discussions or discussions in the country regarding the 13th year, 5-year plan. In conclusion, I would like to note and to also highlight the insights of the Human Development Report to redouble the efforts towards realizing a more just, equitable, and sustainable world for all of us today. We are here to lay the foundation for a brighter tomorrow. And once again, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Tashi Dulek, Kadenshala.
Thank you, Ms. Carla, for encapsulating the significance of the HDR, leaving us with much to reflect upon. For over 3 decades, UNDP's human development reports have served as a beacon of knowledge, driving global conversations on human development, social progress, and economic well-being. And talking about conversations, we have an insightful panel discussion lined up for you to explore how Bhutanese voices can offer valuable lessons and inspiration for reimagining global cooperation, critical for navigating our growing shared global challenges. But before that, we have another session for you to fuel those conversations. It's tea and coffee time. I would like to invite everyone for refreshments near the main entrance. The panel discussion will resume after tea break, and we would like to request everyone here and our viewers online to join us back at 11 a.m. Thank you very much.
Lai shin kam yera yelo bung chito di hagoi Semgawi tilu lapimbe Jobki di tauda cheradu Cheta chitoru semgawe Ngada chegi tamchidu Yun fulale eto meto badi Dami chura goa fame mo Kesi si atiki luma goda Mume shap temengi duhe La 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 Chegi gazam chegi mitogi Ni tu he au shu nga ma shewe Zamni nagi au ze bomra che Tachini vini lom na lume Chegi tari sa ye ya sisa Droma lom da hangu mi chume Yun fulale eto meto badi Dami chura goa fame mo Kesi si atiki luma goda Mume shab chate mengi dohe Nam ki chada gangi lada tu Futi dena ni sem shima chu Yon fulale eto meto badi Dame chura goa fame mo Kesi si atiki luma goda Mume shab temengi duhe La 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 la
Poro Drugel Sundi, Gyakabna Zachinchi Imda, Dia Hema Pawachin, Jan Katule Womi, Pi Damatsu Sunwi, Sonshi Ka Cheto Chibe Dunu. Inru Darenaba Zondi, Jankochilege Jenny Mibleten, Digi Rakung Mashimitsulu Imachin, Chirtangi Sonshichi Chabi Shu Sumchile Hab, Nosatani Minu. Nizumbe digi nyedablu shi chakdi dumi pam gensho tsugiya, zondigi gole rakungzu nida nii seuchi lap tsumi matong.
Tangpo lemi la pa nga chi kashi teni la wana. Nga cha mide la.
Dare naba sakong dina juudi tawachin, zongi jankutsu le ten, mimet lungtong na hyudo sumchilu tedidu. Du dangfugi lojutsu le jedi tawachin, pi jatsu wanlu dubi, jignang jengi sonshi chibe dubi me. 두 개합디 유럽 줍든비나 호카툴레 자가 개합 칠리 브리티시키 완 되비qablu 마차 레셔치라 잡이 루주다 장카툴레 보아진 베마츠기 가우키베 듀 마주비기 루주두 대 장카투기 마 도탑기 될루 두겔 손디 메탑 밉치베 듀누 두겔 손세 따고비기 줌체냐 찔로 찍동 죽자 십주시 실루 뷰에다 소비 갸합니기 마홈다 피 마디 두비 마미츠기 팜땀레 땐 찔로 찍동 죽자 십주시 골루 샵둥 림보체기 손디 신난디 미야 두겔 손세 따비 루주두 찔당기 이차츠날레 배워진 두겔 손세 퇴미루 사니기 미게슈수기 랍도숨 배워진 두겔 손세 메마 미 소소베라 랍니두
동부동te 마접도 죽제니 때 죽이 정스면라 때 패션나 바지 주제 정스면라 때 정이 아니 채채 콘도 주제 잡으면라 때 같이 다 영처럼 죽게 정스 야스면라 패션나 바지 주제 정스면라 때 정이 주제 잡 마음도 정이야 보도베 때 때문에 맞다서 정나 호가를 좀 통보해 때는 다들 집도 아니 보도고 뭐사 때 동부안에 제제 있으면라 때 정 패션을 로테네 바지 주제 정스면라 그 주제 잡이세요. 대단히 같이나 네비 패션을 안 왜 주라지. 내가 저는 지우돌라.
두개 합나 신유비 손시수 가라 람 르베다 파비 게둥기 슈그네다 시든기 찰라 나미 평카츠기 슈그네집에 라렌 탑도 요비 인루 두겔 손디 작부의 차겐 시미 빠잡 짬치기 슈그네집에 라렌 탑디 피 자츠 손디 난기 미세수 시대기 나로 샤탑기 되는 임레 손디 셴다 마도치베라 되는 두겔 손디 갸합나 롱오 숨자 주메니 대지 자마냠 주마냠바 벨덴 두비 갸합 수족기 젠종 집에 라렌 탑디 뒤루 찔로 찍동급자 납주 나치기 롤루 메켄 bombe라 쇼섭레 텐디 손디 다레 장코치베 류미디 딜레 텐디 이메
우치나래 때 손실 나살로 때는 장소도 봐라 유스물라 때와니 그때 도바 젠다 푸도 때기 꼰집지기 때 밥시카 아니 도바 똥산이 줘봐라 때는 동부 라원 봐라 때 라원의 밑에 봐주도 때 우치지구로만 때는 장소에 매라 때만 봐라 때 뒤기 니시고면 못라 때는 아니 라원 봐 루스미 숨어라 때와 루스도 때 코러스 나네 전 때는 때 야마 장소디 되기 아니 민이 되게 때 좀마푸도 아니 라원 우지 때안 때 미시때니 쳐라베 때 지시오메라
그 도바ten 그 롬바게 늘구메라 그니 도접지 까메메라 그 도접야 저가나 잡으메라 그 도바데 추치 니리노 숨이데 쉐니미라
피 집출로 따와진 메기 녀게 남메사미지 마자바 해마 가임베라 통미메 zondi mixelgi takpi magdegi tonle shinshin benidegi pita homyonsu tanida zon nanalera topda la sobegi chonchasu lalen tap chuchogi sago sometsuya nyamchun meba dare nabara peru lalen tap chochobedu
알로치안 발로 좀 밀리면라 좀 여기 와진 통하면라 다 미지실에 때 토시게 잡아줘라
정예마기디 미시사노 때 실레베걸레가 제테미걸레 아니 정샤 사진 짐베 때가지 밤쪽으로 자라베베 때로 아니 자좀 너이노 사베두발라 때가지 충쿠베베디게 때가샤야 안베 밤쪽이 뛴다 밤쪽이야 멍슬럽 마치게 냠마도 봐야 주베 때 밤쪽이 아니베 콩피니 사베오도로 피니세대로 다른 나오면 피니슬라베 몰라 때 냠마베 자심슬라메 발라 때 아니게 아니 저 오만 놀로 때 자춤사 베테로 침감라 숨도 때 내니 주건 야 딸마 매블라 때 딸레 보도로 샤니 고치 샤하투두 에쿠치 샤하투메 때 에쿠치 노파투베 둘라
종디 타린 살레 따위갑 장카툴루 깨비 카우차비 간친 조몰 하리다 샤카툴루 우젠 구루 rumbo치기 네 딱상 생게 삼루 델레 호카툴루 바로 기출 하강다 둠젤 하강 델레 바로 린풍 종츠기 꼬디베 제우이메 두겔 송기 볼로카 주따위가 종디 포토치구 가네와 젠토토베 신디도 종기 주고나 마흡지가 해마 추오바 조시 상위 람지야 세토토베 통츠베 갸캅나 유비 송시 마쇼라 포토구 신디 유블레 디나 슈미츠기 된레 추디 미탑미치 임레 텐디 잡장치츠기 녀바 잡 마츠비 탑시 디즘 레샤라 통 유비 주겔 송디 메켄레 텐디 냠차 쇼디 페루 다레나바 피 갸캅출레 따셰 레샤지라 원시 사고 조지루 주디 옆레 텐디 해마 존딜레 텐디 피 자추 까닐루 펜토 중디 유루 다레나바 갸캅기 게랍다 템베 사고질루 주디 옆레 갸캅기 친남미비 미세초기 존자와 원도 옆 마치 니답기 미수기 바와진 예소기 갑 사사 낭미수 키디 사춤다 트로튼기 된레 참시 싸고 가쇼집에 찌디도 포로 두겔 송디 해마바와진 갸캅기 자이초레 숭니기 속신 숨지 임마지 송디기 소교야 가네와 자치시집에 뒤이루 중화 메켄레 땐 냠차 쇼소루 나제 두미 용기 zondige gene chehingi kole yanle yandu semka dendi güshabda tsikur shunidi tule ji maso se shuni
In a world of diverse paths and endless directions, we each journey through life, carving our unique trails shaped by our experiences, dreams, and challenges. But at times, destiny leads to a moment of connection, a chance to ask for understanding. And in that moment, we have a choice to ask for understanding, to offer empathy. To step out of our own shoes and into someone else's. To feel their world, to understand their journey. Walking in each other's shoes, we understand their trials and embrace their perspectives. After learning each other's experiences, when we return their shoes, we embrace the lessons we learn. With the newfound understanding, we journey in our own shoes, walking side by side. And as we walk in harmony, we discover that empathy is the path to understanding unity and true harmony.
Aloe. 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 Aloe.
Why, Sanfel, Kashmir, why?
Kya chamar wai?
No me ya. Kashnam.
So no me se.
Like you show. Chal beji show. Ah, I'm the young but me na jowa show.
Next. Shoot. Okay, Sanfel yanzo jibi. So nadi namdi nahi. Acha chijas de siasi. The Tomachidi Minjinge, Chiginali Mindin Bebani, should antibiotic amoxicillin, the painkiller should do paracetamol, the Brufen Jumachigi.
Sanfel yanzo minara. That's not the enemy painkiller, Jogani Machuru, she will be shooting. The enemy version antibiotic. The time did it, Jogo was a do, Nima was a beach, was a child. And the name that you were a child is coming to Nima, you got a town that she did, but if she be any antibiotics, Surya, Kalu, Shumans, and the of Barbie, Dr. Chimachi would talk.
I mean, this was a recruiting into Dendas Day. What a day.
Lasola, National Duke have some Jina Bewachin, Tampa Mewa Rimjingi Gadinda, Nipa, Duxun Gadin Chinetiki, so a ship to Song Saya Betan de Gibe, Kaharalu, Shapto, Rimeton Bobby PD, Shunilla, Tizumbegi, Chiga Hablepajo, Doji Bewachin, Kahara, Tiru Titigibe, Tango, Sishunilla. Nachere Duke Hamnalo, Tizumegi, Rimeton Bobby Nambiki Capsulu, Nachi Dumi Chichunga Aragi. No some Jashu down the Gibe, Min Gishop to the Tolamatama Bishina, Lijumbe Chedigibe Gadinchana, Zishunilla.
Tonang di ngoma chimen.
Iru pejatupi. Tona I. Dabin. Machitsugi.
Tonang di pini.
Nabu zidra shuna.
다른 게 부대 하스톤 왜 돼?
Toya.
Kala chui da fede ailinge. The chorapa ni sa chuna jobe kam lapsu hisan su chuba shumai.
That's like.
Darecho chimla chinela shay goshte.
Ba yuwa ai digi madwa hamnya le shejire. Di nadani le naba lokon jinju jian pyogobi.
Inna datin chorapa kamina jobe de chimla su trite mai. De timase an hamni chan yumuse kara hap. Ei chulu chas bom yede.
Last lie.
Bapu, Chana Jamaregi.
Last lie.
Oi, to sa tawa. Ngajirani atara bemi ladi gutsudagi mena.
Oi, nga chimla leshe tinisi. Hemara nga chimla jidagi mena.
Chimla semidi jem gara tsabda jinide. Ngaya doto majide. Che matse wajin nga semigani meme.
Ya, tupde ten chi nyera mato wachini onde. Dile M4 meme M4.
Dawa.
Lai.
To sawa show to sage.
Nga to sago mano ai. To chera zabe nyeda.
Ya inatin.
Kile. Nga besa shu nga besa. Kile nana. Zebom ko demi zebom. Chamchi satra dume kile.
Dawa.
Lai.
Non sada. Chusa chata gaya langsano. Loprana joni chumare.
Lasla. Ya, tabin kesara keda numare. Katsa chimla mati sayin. Dari lokon chinju ki tenu pecha yang hamatu. Tibu dam churu ki toya mi. Tana, dam churu aigi bau mi chadira thuma suba lesunude. Awo wat. Nalepa ben ani zungi ladi jara jagonu me mare.
Dise chola matang. Chola tansami dise di si degi jeru log mito. Di bewle dise tenda dembe lalin tapna.
Jela, Jela, Sevade, Jape Concho, Somlacho, Nesum Kande, Kelmaye. Rojan chu senda drone dro sumara sase deje dawa dai jidanda when John you are Dilwala Dichiniki Kelfushu Barche Kenge Dopashu Lima Semla Suwaju Nelam Tukuru Tende Ju Tuje Nipe Wankuruishu Jilu Mengagi Japeshu O Serene me Trashishu Kampwe Kidu Kerake Rite tu para Jingilo Trampwe Kidu Kerake Rite tu para Jingilo
All right, good morning, La. Can you hear me? Morning, La. I think as people settle in, welcome back to the session for the day, the panel discussion on breaking the gridlock. I hope everyone's bodies are fueled and minds are fueled, and that, am I clearer now? Yeah. And thank you for your presence. Like I said, I hope your minds and your bodies are fueled. We are live on Facebook, UNDP Bhutan Facebook, as well as the BBS Facebook feed. So I also would like to therefore extend our greetings to our online audience. The panel discussion, we're mainly going to focus on the solution pathways forward. It's about an hour, so we have about 40 minutes for the panelists' thoughts and reflection, and about 20 minutes for questions from the audience. For our online audience, we have someone monitoring our online chat, so please do send in your questions. And for the in-person audience, later on when we have a session for Q&A, you're welcome to raise your hands and ask questions, or if you have questions as we are discussing, please write it out on a note, and if that's more comfortable for you to ask questions. And we have, I believe, note ushers from the UN family here who will pass on the notes up to me here on the stage. So The Human Development Report is quite a sobering one, I must say, but I think it's also something that is much needed, because only after we realize the problems can we find solutions moving forward, and to also know where we stand as a global family and to chart our collective pathways into the future. Much has been said about the report, so I'm not going to go much into the content of the report, but maybe I'll just share two things that stood out to me as I was reading the report and also listening to the addresses this morning, as well as the video addresses that we received. First, I am reminded of Professor Heifetz and his team at Harvard University's work on adaptive leadership, because I think what we need at this time is more of adaptive leadership to address our adaptive challenges, because the challenges we face are not technical challenges. So technical challenges normally is known, is routine, we've done it before kind of challenge. But rather adaptive leadership seeks to solve adaptive challenges. And adaptive leadership is a leadership that seeks to mobilize people and resources towards a solution when faced with complex, ambiguous, non-routine challenges, such as those identified in the report, and such solutions require new learnings. It requires a mindset change, parting from how things were done to being open to trying new things and being experimental. So therefore, it's a difficult leadership style because, as I said, it requires mind shift change, and normally mind shift change leads to emotional fallouts. People's actions and mindsets are embedded in cultural tradition, and asking people to change from how they feel like it's going, to ask people to change from how they feel is they're going against their values, and or going against how they know things are always done and perceived as. So it leaves them feeling vulnerable, insecure, in a position of what I call least competence. So therefore, it is a huge challenge, and I think, without going into the details of the report, because much has been said, but I feel like this is probably something that, as young, we have a lot of young people here as well, that's something we should reflect upon in terms of how we prepare our mindset and apply towards that. And as for the second thing, I'm going to skip for now, and maybe if I remember, I'll speak of it in a concluding remarks, but rather I'm just going to move forward to a panelist here like I said earlier, our panel discussion is going to be more about the solutions pathway forward. And we have a panel here who comes from deep experience and deep work within Bhutan and beyond. And so without much ado, I am going to move on to a panel and give a brief introduction about them. First, myself, I'm Tinley Choden. I'm the moderator for the panel today. And we have Mr. Chencho, he's the director of the Cabinet Secretariat, so he represents the government in general. We have Mr. Shamit Chakravarti, the country representative of ADB office here in Bhutan, and we have given him the responsibility to represent the international development partners here. We have Ms. Sonam Pem, who's the executive director for Tarayana Foundation, and she represents the civil society organization. And we have Mr. Sonam Chofel, who is the president of CSI. CSI stands for Cottage and Small Industries Market, and he represents the private sector, more kind of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And before I get into the question, maybe I'll ask our panelists to reflect upon what is a key takeaway from the report, as well as all the addresses that were done in the morning. And if I may start with Mr. Chencho, our government representative here. I think it's on. You can talk.
Last, good morning. Good morning. As introduced, I am Chencho, Director for Office of Cabinet Affairs and Strategic Coordination. Since the transformation, we have we are also getting used to the new names of our office, so please don't mind if our moderator is not able to correctly give the name of my office. It is an honor to be on the panel today on a very important subject that is very important to all of us here and relevant to all of us here. Amongst the many profound insights that the report has highlighted, I have picked up two. Number one is, as we all understand, leadership is key to any progress and success, and more so it is true in times of crisis. Great leadership, as we all know, focuses on common goal, then mobilizes team, builds coalition, and then through a very rigorous discipline of action ensures delivery on the ground through inspiration, motivation, and hard work. So this is what we see in our Majesty every day. And to highlight just one, Bhutan could effectively manage one of the greatest crises of our time, which is the pandemic, against all odds, is only because of one thing, and that is because of great leadership of His Majesty the King. And every day until the pandemic was behind us, we actually saw adaptive leadership at play. So therefore, right leadership is key, and it takes wise and selfless leadership focused singularly on promoting peace, prosperity, and progress, both at global and international level. So this is one key takeaway I would like to take from the HDR report. Number two is, as the report highlighted, we live in an ever more connected world today, and it is virtually actually impossible for any country to survive in isolation, let alone fighting crisis or poly-crisis. So it is also evident from the way we fought the pandemic. Of all the countries, Bhutan could not have actually achieved what we did had it not been for the support and cooperation that we received from various organizations, development partners. So therefore, again, it highlights the need for us to capitalize on our connections, as the report highlights, in collectively fighting the shared challenges that we have in front of us today. So in conclusion, I would like to highlight investing in right leadership and also nurturing partnership and engagement all across, both within and outside, are the two takeaways that actually resonated quite well with what we actually did in Bhutan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sonam. So leadership and collaboration, I think those are the two takeaways. Mr. Shamit?
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to kind of direct my response to the young children here, because they have only grown up in this age of, digitalization, social media. I think they have grown up seeing so much polarization. But I'd like to assure all of you that, if you look back in history, we have been through many worst phases, and humanity, while it can do many stupid things, right? I mean, when you saw Frankie the dinosaur, talking about, hey, what do you want to do? You're going to get extinct, but you are funding your own, demise. You're pumping in more oil. You're not taking serious decisions. So I'm sure all of you must have thought, how come our elders, the leaders, they don't do what is obviously correct? But what I would like to tell you, that while humanity is also very capable of ignorant and dumb things, but it is also capable of doing amazing things. And if you look back in history, the Second World War, when it ended, the United Nations Charter of Human Rights, please read that. That's an amazing document which came out after, First World War, Second World War, 30, 40 years of absolute unbelievable barbarity. We thought we had solved all the problems, but then the Cold War followed. The nuclear bomb was always a threat. even I was not born at that time. I am older to you, but I was not born at that time. But when I was as old as you, I distinctly remember the day the Berlin Wall fell, November 9th, 1989. So the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic collapses without a single shot being fired. That was also done by us. 1970, with all the UN agencies cooperating, we managed to eradicate smallpox. So yes, from the report, sometimes you will find it very, very pessimistic. But I can assure you that, with representatives of the government, civil society, private sector, and here, as Thinley said, I'm representing everyone, the multilateral donors, the bilateral donors, and, together and with all of you and the other agencies, I'm sure, we have the knowledge, the capacity, the technology to make a difference, to break this cycle of polarization. But before I end, each one of us has a role to play as individuals. So, when you are reading your WhatsApp and social media, if you find divisive messages, you need to think. You need to think for yourself. Whether that person is saying the right thing or the wrong thing. You should not get, misled. So as individuals, we have a role to play. As communities, we have a role to play. Of course, as a multilateral development bank, we are supposed to be apolitical. But I'll give you examples later of how all of us have been collaborating to fight COVID together, to fight climate change. So bottom line is, please don't be pessimistic. The report gives you a rundown of what is going wrong, because there's no point in having blinkers, but it also charts a way forward. And I think all the actors in any country, government, civil society, private sector, donor agencies, so many, private bodies, agencies, all of us have a collective responsibility, and I'm sure, we will come out the victor at the end. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's more of individual responsibility for collective action, and not being cautiously optimistic, or what I like to say, a hard-edged hope. The two Sonams, I'll go with Miss Sonam first, and then then followed by Mr. Sonam.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I've spent my entire career serving Tarayana Foundation, an organization that works at the grassroots level, serving the last mile. So from the report, what resonated with me the most is the inequality, both from the global as well as our own report. We're very happy and proud of our country graduating from LDC to MDC now. But at the same time, as an organization, as a sector, we're concerned about the small percentage, which is around 12.5%, that lives in poverty. We're concerned about this margin of the population, which might get left behind if we continue doing business as usual, because of all the new challenges that are arising because of the fast-paced development at which we are developing. So the small percentage of the population that I'm referring to are the ones who are faced with multiple vulnerabilities. They are socially challenged, economically challenged, environmentally challenged, and now technologically challenged. As the country is progressing, we have a great ambition of being technologically advanced in the next few years. We should not forget of this small population that may not be able to cope up with the development. So inequality is something that really bothers us, really concerns us. And there's a lot that we need to do to make sure that this percentage keeps up with the current development pace at which we are going.
Thank you, Sonam. So, it's impressive remaining steadfast towards your North Star, working towards poverty and the least or the last mile served. Mr. Sonam.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. While I was thinking about the key takeaways, so many things struck me. I like polarization, but I think Mr. Shamid already talked about polarization. But I like the traffic jam, which Mr.
I
Kushi
hope you
was
like
mentioning.
fighting against polarization, not fighting for polarization.
I think to touch upon polarization, I think it's driven by fear, where you sort of like get engaged into a certain mindset. But then I think sometimes it's good, but if you can make polarization a collective effort, I'm sure there's much more. Sometimes we need a polarized kind of support network to get things done. I think I'm particularly interested in the traffic jam. I feel like there's so many activities, so many engagements, so many projects, so many programs being initiated, but we sort of get stuck up. We sort of like get trapped in all those activities sometimes. We forget the end, you know. That's something that sort of bothers me, and I see that happening across the board. That's something that I really found it very interesting. And the last one would be, I think, gaps. Gaps in agency was something that really caught my attention, because I feel like I'm sort of like part of that agency. And also the intergenerational gap that I see across, because across over there I see a group of a lot of young people here, and also front 2-3 rows we have senior members of our society. So the intergenerational gap, I think we have to break down the barriers, make it very, the channel has to be very coherent, and it should be very welcoming, so that our young generation becomes part of this fulfilling or sort of clearing the agency gaps. And I sort of feel that as an agency, my principle would be to see how can we not really polarize a certain section of society or a certain interest group, but rather how can we create this collective effort together. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So leveraging polarization for collective efforts, and the audience, the front senior citizens, and the back younger generations, so intergenerational. Kushit is going back. He wants to be amongst the younger generation. So moving on to our next set of questions, now that we have heard the key takeaways or reflections from a panelist. Like I said earlier, we want to focus more on the solution pathways that has been identified in the report, and there are namely 3 of them. And maybe I'll first start with Mr. Shamit. I hope you don't mind me calling you by your first name. In Bhutan, we go by first names rather than second names. So one of the solution pathways identified or suggested in the report is to build a 21st century architecture for what they call global public goods. In addition to, I think in the morning, Mr. Kushit discussed about the traditional development assistance and humanitarian assistance, but the global public good that cuts across boundaries and sectors. And so in that perspective, what roles can multilateral, bilateral, or international development partners like ADB, or even the ones in the room here, can play in this pursuit? And I think more specifically, I would say, what are the levers and what are the limitations for that?
Okay, thank you. Well, just for everybody's information, I think ADB, World Bank, UN, all the multilateral, bilateral development banks, for the past several years, they have been focusing on what you might call global public goods, climate change or air pollution, water pollution, and so on. So maybe I can start with a few examples from ADB. Now, our Asian Development Bank has put aside $100 billion between 2022 to 2030, just to help countries fight climate change. And we don't do it alone, we do it with all of you. When the COVID pandemic broke out, the Asian Development Bank put aside $20 billion to support countries. Out of that, $20 million was also given to Bhutan to support the government when it was facing a budget crisis, because during COVID, all economic activities had shut down. There was no tax revenue, non-tax revenue had plummeted. So $20 million Bhutan got from this corpus of $20 billion that ADB put together. ADB also put together $9 billion for vaccine. And from there, again, Bhutan got $10 million. But that $10 million we worked with the UNICEF, with the WHO, with the World Bank to reinforce the government's efforts to, improve surveillance, and, these pediatric vaccine doses were actually purchased from there. We have a healthy oceans action plan, I think about $5 billion. Regional cooperation integration is very important, right? One of the messages of this report is how do you break the gridlock? So when we are working in Bhutan, we are not just focusing only on Bhutan. We are also thinking about how to improve Bhutan's trade connectivity with India and eventually with Bangladesh, right? And India and Nepal and Bangladesh, India and Nepal and so on. So only yesterday we had a joint meeting with the World Bank and JICA and our team on how we can improve. Government of India is going to build a railway network, right? So we are also going to invest in a road section, Lamoizhongkha to Sarpang, down the southern border of Bhutan. Today, as you know, you have to drive through West Bengal and Assam and then drive up to Galefu. Now, our agencies, we realize that, development challenges cut across borders, pollution cuts across borders. So we are already working in this direction. Is this enough? No, we need to do more. Before I conclude, Sonam made the point about inequality, and I think it's important for our young participants to understand why there is this polarization. I think what you meant is discussion and debate are always good because that helps to bring problems to the fore, but that should not lead to polarization. Discussion, debate has to be more persuasive. So let me just give you some statistics. The top 1%, the richest 1% in the world, they control 38% of the world's wealth. The top 10% of the world controls 76% of the world's wealth. The next 40%, about 22%. So what you are seeing is about 50% of the global population only has about 1.5 to 2% of the world's wealth. That's like a rounding off error. So while we are all concerned with the rise of right-wing parties and illiberal democracies and strong men, who are trying to dilute democracy, we must understand that they are responding to something. They are responding to that insecurity. They are responding to, the needs of the people who are left behind. So they just want to break. They are angry. So it is incumbent on all of us as individuals, again, and in whatever we do, that we have to make sure that development is equitable. Nobody is demanding equality of outcomes. Each one of us has different talents, different strengths. He can be a big wrestler, right? He's bigger than me. I can't, right? But you have to give me the opportunity. If I really want to get into wrestling, you have to give me the opportunity. So I think what we as a society, as a government, as a civil society, as a development bank, we have to work together to make sure that the younger generation, everybody, there is equality of opportunity. And for that, good education, good health. You are lucky, Bhutan is a very cohesive society. Inequality is very low. Enrollment levels are very high. But when you are seeing the polarization around you, there are reasons. Everything was not well. So yes, we have to change. You spoke about adaptive change. But coming back, yes, global public goods, that's a very big focus. We are doing a lot, but we need to do more. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So starting from regional cooperation to maybe more international and setting, I suppose, the basic baseline, whether it's infrastructure in the physical term or whether it's more of an ideological term to work towards that. Second, I'll go to Ms. Sonam. Another solution pathway suggested is what they say, narrowing agency gaps, and I think your opening or your key takeaway also already resonates with that. So given Tarayana's impressive and dedicated work in Bhutan towards rural development, my question is, what does agency mean for Tarayana Foundation? And I think more critically, what does it mean for the communities and the individuals and the households that you serve? And maybe what is one or two critical gaps that is overlooked or blindsided? And what can be done about it to close the gap?
So as we heard in the morning's presentation by Mr. Krushid, agency is referred more to how we can make people be their own change, how we can enable them to be part of the change. And for Tarayana, again, working with the most vulnerable, marginalized communities, we feel that there is a need to strengthen the rights and responsibilities in a country like ours, where democracy is young but fast maturing. And what we have found out over the last 2 decades from our experiences is that there are communities, you won't believe, where people cannot even articulate their needs. And as a service provider, we expect them to engage, to be partners of the development initiatives, equal partners. You would expect them to be that. But what you don't realize is some of the communities, people you're serving, may not have that capacity because they're living in poverty. And I want to make a reference to the housing improvement program that we are undertaking, which has been our flagship program, but unfortunately in the past 3 years, we've not been able to continue, mainly because of resource constraint. So there are people living in these small makeshift houses. And when people live in those kind of dwellings, you cannot expect them to be productive. You cannot expect them to think of the country because they're struggling on a daily basis of their own insecurities. They have to worry about their house being blown by the winds, rain seeping in. Every day they're worrying. And if you don't address these basic needs first, then they're not going to, they're not able to help their family. So forget about contributing to nation building. So my point is, we have to address the basic needs first. If you want them to be equal partners, if you want them to contribute to nation building, to be equal partners to development, so that they don't have to worry about these small things, insecurities. And over the years, we've seen how these programs, housing improvement program, changes an individual's self-esteem, self-confidence in the community, in the family. Once they are able to take care of their own family, then they think about the community and the district and the nation at large. So I think currently in our development model, we expect them to have that capacity. And we're constantly building our own capacities to deliver the services, not realizing that they may not have the capacity to be an equal partner. And another thing is, I think by and large, our society, because everything is provided for by the government, education, health, infrastructure, everything. And I want to make a special reference to the communities again. You have a road coming in, you are not contributing labor. The road is provided by the government. You will not question the quality of the road, how the tendering processes is done, because you're not contributing. It's not your money, it's the government's money. But when the road breaks down or an infrastructure breaks down, you will be responsible to mend it. You have to provide the labor. So there's no social accountability sense, because everything is provided for free. And it's important that we have to make our communities, all our, whoever we're serving, make them aware of their rights, at the same time the responsibilities that comes along with the rights. And this leads to, we feel, I think currently there's a higher corruption rate at the local government. If we can help with these, creating awareness, building capacities of our communities, we could also bring down the corruption rates at the local government, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the 3rd highest in the country at the moment. And basically, it's about making individuals productive in their own ways so that they can be partner to developing the country.
Thank you. I think that's a very apt point, rights and responsibilities, but also your point on language and narrative, because from urban to rural Bhutan, but also Bhutan to the global, sometimes finding the common language and engaging with it in itself is a barrier to begin with. Next, I have Mr. Sonam. Along the same lines of narrowing the agency gap, coming from the CSS sector, what does agency mean for the private sector or for the entrepreneur and the startup ecosystem? And likewise, what are some gaps? There may be many gaps, but what is the top 1 or 2 gaps that you feel should be put forth as a solution pathway for the future?
Thank you. As an agency representative of CSI, just to give you a brief background of what I'm trying to kind of represent here is Bhutan's 95% of Bhutan's industry is either a Scottish small or a sort of like small to medium enterprise, very small, large industries in Bhutan. I'm consciously choosing to kind of represent this section, the 95% of the so-called, I would say, the private sector representative from Bhutan, and their collective voice, their challenges, their needs, and at the core of it, I believe the solution, the agency that I get influenced, that I get inspired, is through the power of entrepreneurship. I believe entrepreneurship can provide solutions. Entrepreneurship can create jobs. Entrepreneurship can inspire people and also address this human development challenge that we came across. The agency that I feel is very important is because if you look at the industry in Bhutan, 10% of our workforce, that's around 10% of Bhutan's workforce, is represented by this sector. But then we need to empower them, the locus of their control. There has to be more empowerment, there has to be more autonomy, they have to feel that they're kind of franchise, and then they have to feel that they are part of the decision-making process. They are stakeholders in governance, they are stakeholders in building the country's economy or whatever it may be. And I think this agency needs to be empowered in Bhutan. Our government is constantly working towards it. I think we can do much better. Of course, like I said, we don't want to get into this traffic jam where there's so much of activities rolled out. But we forget the end. The end is really to come out with very tangible outcomes in the country. We need resilience in our economy. We should be able to kind of shield away from the economic shocks. We should be able to address the migration issues that we're currently facing in the country. So how do we do that? I see great potential in this power of entrepreneurship and in the circles of especially the SME, the small, medium enterprises. The idea is not to remain small. The idea is not to get trapped in this micro-enterprise model, but this is really to transition ourselves to grow. And this is where I feel a lot of young people feel empowered. I think non-entrepreneurship means unemployment. Non-entrepreneurship means being left behind. And I feel that is polarizing ourselves, So I feel everybody must think as an entrepreneur. And entrepreneur, sometimes the definition could be very commercialized, but I feel it's from a mindset perspective. Now, if I talk about what are the gaps, there's so many gaps. There's the small gaps and the big gaps. The small gaps are basically entrepreneurship is looked up as creating jobs, is forced as a job creation. I don't think that is entrepreneurship. I think it should be opportunity-driven. As long as you are opportunity-driven, entrepreneurship is here to stay, and it is going to build our next economy. In the next Bhutan's new economy will be created by entrepreneurship. The other area that I feel the gaps here is you start small, you aspire to grow big. And for most times, I see they call it the perennial problem in Bhutan. There's access to finance, but it need not be just debt borrowing. In Bhutan, every business we think about is started through just borrowing money. I don't mind borrowing it from my friends and families, but is there a way around it? Can we think about other avenues of creating this capital, this investment in the country? It need not be. Sometimes most of our so-called entrepreneurs serve the interests of the borrowers, meaning our interest rates are very high. So these are areas that I feel, straight to the point, access to finance becomes a big challenge. So most of our entrepreneurs get stuck in serving the interests of the borrowers rather than trying to fulfill or achieve the mission of sort of enhancing their ventures. The second would be lack of market access. Market access is, again, in Bhutan, since we are a landlocked country, is always a big challenge. But I feel like Bhutan should not think about Bhutan inward. We have to create policies where we are able to connect with the global supply chains. How can Bhutan be part of this global supply chain? How can Bhutan be a supplier, a vendor into any value chain across the region? I feel there is potential, but we need to think about policies that are outward. We need to break our barriers across the borders. And I think Mr. Shamit was mentioning about having roads across Bhutan, India. These are something that we've been dreaming about. But I don't think it's a time where we sit back and wait for things to happen. I think through the power of entrepreneurship, again, I highlight entrepreneurship because it's an amazing journey for me. Through the power of entrepreneurship, I think we can tap into all of these resources. And beyond that, the gaps in agency still remains perennial, meaning there's a lot of information asymmetry. What we expect, we don't get it, and this sort of drives, again, polarization, because the lack of data drives unintended polarization. So these are areas that I think these are inherent in Bhutan. We must put effort to correct this. And as an agency promoter myself, was representing the collective voice of so many SMEs in Bhutan, we are very keen to work together with our multilateral partners, with the government, and CSOs are as important as much as our government is. So I would probably end it over here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonam. So I think his point, I like the point on entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship doesn't necessarily mean you're in the private sector. It's more of a skill and a mindset. And I think that's something that should be driven home to our young students here. Having an entrepreneurial mindset opens you up to opportunities, and I like how you pivoted from opportunity-driven, pivoted on that point of being opportunity-driven. So lastly, we have Mr. Chencho from the cabinet. Sorry, I think you said I did not give the right thing. What's the office called now?
Office of Cabinet Affairs and Strategic Coordination.
Okay, so I stand corrected. It's the Office of Cabinet Affairs and Strategic Coordination. The third solution pathway that is suggested in the report is to push back on polarization. And so from the perspective of the government, what does it mean to governance and leadership? I think we've talked a bit about leadership earlier, myself and a few others here. But what does it mean from perspective of governance and closely related to that leadership? And given Bhutan's smooth transition, or the progress that we've made in a democracy or a democratic process, what can Bhutan possibly offer to the world as either an inspiration or something that they can do or something that they can avoid doing? So maybe that's my question to you, La.
Thank you, La. So, of course, from a leadership and governance standpoint, ultimately it means that the leadership and the governance systems have to be able to deliver the results and able to solve the problems that we face together. So, and at the end of the day, any system is an interplay of leadership and governance systems all put together. So therefore, firstly, I feel the leadership should be able to know the underlying reasons and causes of inequality, causes of polarization like economic inequality, like Mr. Chakrabarti just mentioned, 1% of the population controls 38% of the global wealth. So these sort of things, social injustice, ideological differences, cultural divisions, etc. So after knowing that, then it is imperative to also promote participatory, respectful, inclusive political discourse, and then through fostering cooperation, develop a solution together, co-create solution, which can then be co-owned by citizens and also all the players in the society, And we have today together with us CSO, private sector, and also representatives from the development partners community. So if I may talk a little bit about the 13th five-year plan, for example, the 13th five-year plan, all of us know that we aim to become a developed nation in 10 years' time from now, 2034, but particularly in the 13th five-year plan, we would like to double our GDP by 2029. So in that, one of the key features of the plan is that, and the Honorable Prime Minister has been mentioning this time and again in all the bilateral meetings that he has been having with all the agencies, that in the 13th five-year plan, this is a plan which cannot be just implemented by the government alone. So therefore, we need to actually really carefully think about the role of the government. So the plan really forces us to now think about what must not be done by the government, what could be actually on their own done by people like Sonam as entrepreneurs, and then what is currently done by the government could actually be privatized, what could be done through PPP, what could be outsourced to the private sector, and also what could actually be done by CSOs. So therefore, these are some of the ideas that are incorporated in the plan, and when the plan is launched, there will be specific guidelines and also communication related to this. And then, of course, we also have to ensure that we have a more informed and educated citizenry in order to push back on polarization, because that is the ultimate solution for sustainable solution in the long run. And in that, there are certain things which are beyond Bhutan's control. Bhutan is a small country, we can do our best. But as long as the world is driven by neoliberalism and its manifestation in various shapes and forms, which tend to, I could be wrong, but which tend to actually be more biased and benefit more the capital owners and their managers instead of the wage earners or the labor force. We are actually bound to have this inequality of income. That is my personal supposition. I stand corrected, but this is where government needs to also play its vital role of ensuring that while we may grow economically, but there are measures and systems put in place to redistribute the income effectively. And in so doing, I think Bhutan has done a good job, because we still provide free education and healthcare to all our population. And maybe that is one of the reasons why our HDI has also jumped 2 places up. The other thing is including the mainstream media and more so the social media, because the social media, while people are, the information is actually generated by the people, but the background algorithm is actually controlled by the tech giants. So therefore, in order to increase their viewership or whatever, we really don't have access to what sort of algorithm they are using behind the social media. So maybe when people post materials that can actually insinuate polarization, maybe it increases the amount of viewership. So these are some challenges beyond Bhutan and beyond any country, but challenges that must be solved through international cooperation. So for now, maybe I will stop at that.
Thank you, So results-driven, creating spaces and path for collective discussion, narratives, and actions. And I think, if I may, and I know in Bhutan we keep hearing it, but since we have an audience online and maybe we do have some global audience, I should put in maybe a model of governance can be gross national happiness governance, or the principles of it and how countries adopt and adapt to it could also be something that might be used as a guiding framework or a philosophy for those that are not necessarily known to that concept. So I think we don't have that much time. We probably have about 12 or 13 minutes now. We are a little over time. So I'll open it up for questions from our audience here as well as our online audience. If there's any, someone's monitoring, I think, the questions, but I'll first give first to the audience here in the hall. If you have any questions, please raise your hand, and I think there'll be someone running around with a mic. No? It does take some time to warm up, so. Do we have? Oh, yeah. Sorry, I can't see. You can. Oh, Michael, we have one here. Can someone? No, I can hear you, but I think the others at the back may not be able to hear you.
I'm sorry, this is not really a question, but perhaps a suggestion. I think we've been misled in the past by the old motto, think globally, act locally. I believe that's a mistake. I think thinking globally causes us to have information overload. We get to know a whole lot of things all about the world that we can do absolutely nothing about. If there's a riot in Rio de Janeiro, what difference does it make in Northern Lam? So I think the concept of thinking locally is guaranteed to give us information overload and to cause us, therefore, enormous stress. It also makes us feel that if we act locally, the tiny little action that I can do of not driving my car in Thimphu is so small as to be insignificant in terms of its effect on global warming, environment, or whatever. So I'd like to suggest to the panel, I'd love your comment on a reverse. Think locally, act globally. And what we see with the problem in so many issues in the world today, from environment to the situation in Palestine, is that we're not acting globally. I think if we could act globally, then we could have an effect. But we need to think locally, because we need to think about ourselves, about our particular circumstances. Life in Bhutan, very different from life in New York. So we need to think locally, think about us here, what can you do with friends and with family, and act globally. And this is where the United Nations could be so effective if only the UN genuinely acted globally, and not only the UN, but other organizations too. And I'm sure ADB will say they act globally. Now, you can ignore all that I'm saying, because I am by far the oldest person in this room. But you know, there is an English proverb, old wine tastes sweeter.
The wisdom that comes with it. Anyone would like to reflect upon the statement made?
It's difficult to follow after Michael's, very good points that he has made, but maybe we should give an opportunity to the youngsters here.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on what Dr. Michael Rutland just said, young person? Huh? Yeah, you can do it in Dzongkha if you want to. Or are some wisdom better left untouched?
Michael, nowadays they say we should be thinking and acting glocally.
Glocally. The wordplay. Yeah. But I think, Michael, your point, I think having an anchor is very important.
Yes.
Whether it's thinking locally, acting globally, or vice versa. But to have an anchor in what you do, and especially in this age of climate change and the whole kind of overwhelming sense that comes with it, I think having an anchor, and I do a lot of work with young people, I always say find an anchor. Once you find an anchor, then that anchor can give you the perspective and the framework to look at all these different issues and then give you a sense of rounding it together or bringing it together. So any other questions or comments from the audience here? Otherwise, I think we have an online question, but I'm going to wait maybe 10 seconds because I know we're kind of close to the... Yes,
good.
We have a young girl here.
Very good.
On your right.
So my question is regarding social media. So as we all know, social media is very prevalent in all of our lives, and there are many problems as well as there are many advantages to social media. And as Mr. Tsencho has also stated, there is this problem with the algorithm as well. So my question is regarding what can be done in order to mitigate those effects, the effects that social media has when it comes to polarization, and moreover, how can we efficiently use social media platforms in order to mitigate those effects and spread awareness?
Thank you. What's your name?
Yishe Dalmasri.
You're from which school?
The Royal Academy.
Royal Academy. Okay, thank you, Ishe. Do you want anyone to answer?
No, it's open to everyone.
It's open to anyone and everyone. Okay, first maybe we'll... Okay, one more question.
Or, let me try and answer. You see, if you go back in time, technology is technology. Whether we use it badly or whether we use it well, it is ultimately in our own hands, right? Now, you can say once upon a time, we had to travel on horseback and camelback and elephant back, right? Now, then we had cars, we had railways. Of course, that also caused a lot of pollution. Now we are, getting into EVs and so on. So, even a simple knife, a surgeon can use it for surgery or somebody can use it to stab someone. So I think social media, it's a very difficult problem. And I actually feel for your generation. I have twin daughters. They are now 21. And, there's a big generation gap. You see, first and foremost, all of us need to read history. We have to understand history. Michael's command over history will be infinitely better than mine because he has lived through those events. I have seen those events on the screen. When I see something about the World War, when I see something about the Holocaust, that leaves an indelible impression, number one. So you have to read history. It's not easy because some governments will be changing your history books. It will not be easy because you will be bombarded with easy things on your social media. But remember, being inclusive is always better than being divisive. Simple old principles, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Remember those things. Then you use your judgment. Then, if you see your friend has kind of been misled and all, talk to him or her. It's not easy. Michael, what really worries me is today in the day and age of deep fakes, and AI, even you and I will not be able to understand what is genuine or what is not. Then my only simple principle will be anything that divides, stay away from it. Anything which is easy, which is telling you, yeah, this is the whole truth, don't listen to anything else, be very suspicious of it. Beyond that, I don't know what to say, because really AI and deepfake and whatever is going on, it's become so difficult for even us. But please read history, please read widely, make up your own judgment.
Just add to what Hisha was
A
asking.
quick point, yeah, so we want to make...
Okay. Because I run a tech-enabled business, I sort of know how, it's really about empowering. I think you should just use technology as a tool to empower whatever you try to achieve, instead of looking the other way around. How can I use technology to do how can I be part of technology? I think you should be part of technology. You just use it to reach to your goals. I think social media, very smart, because what social media really demands from people is attention. And attention is free nowadays, because everybody is giving 6 hours of your time on social media. So the thing is, the only thing you can battle that out is, I think there has to be some regulations as well, especially with the kind of content that comes in. Second thing, there has to be some sort of, because social media needs to be governed. I think we're having these global discussions on how technology can be, there has to be some controls, otherwise you lose control. Second thing is social media is very invasive, very pervasive, and also we have to have some sort of awareness. There has to be education around it. You have to be very conscious, and in the end, judgment is very important. So there's a lot of, social media is so powerful, and then sometimes it can even drive us into anxiety, depression. I see a lot of that happening in young people, because social media drives you that. And the more there's so much of machine learning at the back end where you want attention, they want to give you attention to the right individual. So the only thing I can do as a Buddhist citizen is just be conscious, educate your young friends, families, juniors about the positive and the negative effects. I think beyond that, it's a global crisis right now with the technology, being very pervasive and sort of controlling people's attention. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add one thing. If something is free, you're the product. So social media, you're the product, I think someone had a question here. If not, we'll go online question. Okay. After that, we'll go to the online question. Oh, yeah.
So my question is related to Yashesh's question. So how can we as youth contribute to addressing those global challenges, such as related to HDI, such as advocating for equality? Are there any programs that can create awareness among the youth to address those challenges?
And are you from the Royal Academy as well? Okay, what's your name?
Rashmika.
Rashmika. Okay, anyone would like to address Rashmika's question?
I'll just add on. I think because I work with Royal Academy as well, I think the way for you is to really come forward. We provide internship activities where you actually be part of this. And then I think we should not leave out the young people, especially from a private sector. This is what I offer, where we bring them on board to experience what we do. I think that's where you start. And I think, as Michael mentioned about acting globally, is you can really be part of global initiatives. You just have to reach out. Sometimes just asking people the right questions and asking for help. But if you don't do that, the fear of missing out, you might be left out. So the only thing is just ask the right question, reach out to the right person. I think that's how you start being part of all the human development discussions we had earlier.
Any? Yeah.
From the civil society, in the civil society sector, there are many CSOs that have youth networks across the country. For Tarana, we have school clubs, Tarana school clubs. So these club members carries out all the advocacy, awareness. So that's one way of engaging. But like us, Renew, YDF, and some other CSOs have similar networks.
Okay, if we can move on to the online question, I think we're going to have someone read it out.
So I'll be reading one question, being mindful of the time. It says there are currently 2 very different Gini stats for Bhutan.
NSB says it's 0.28, while Oxfam, quoted by Kuncel, says 0.54. What's your thoughts about this disparity? What is the actual wealth disparity in the country as per the HDR?
Is the human development statistics you're talking?
Yes, so what is the actual wealth disparity?
So what is the actual wealth disparity?
So as long as the data is concerned, we use NSB is our National Statistic Bureau. So we use the standards adopted by NSB. NSB bases it on if it is census based. The latest one we had was in 2017. That was the last population housing census. Then if it is the next one is the survey, BLSS, is also one of the major statistics that we reference. So that was in 2019. So all the data that we use is based on this BLSS as of now. So we don't, maybe there are other organizations that conduct various exercises or studies on Bhutan, but for our purpose we use the NSB published data.
Okay.
So on the question of how the young girl from the Royal Academy could contribute to the HGI, I want to be very, very technical. So HGI has 3 indicators. One is life expectancy, so try to live up to 100 years. Second is number of years of schooling, which you have already, I think you are already on the way to achieve the highest score possible. The third thing is you provide opportunity for others to also get schooling. So I think that you are well on track to doing that. The fourth is GNI per capita. So there is no limit to that now. And Mr. Sonam can also be a good mentor and advisor for you to start off initially. And then ultimately, as people say, sky is the limit for increasing GNI per capita, not only for yourself, but for all the others in the room and then beyond. So if you could do that, this will ultimately increase the GNI per capita for HDI for Bhutan. There was one question on what do we do on social media. So if you look at how ultimately as Buddhists, I really don't know we are followers, serious followers or not, but we claim to be born Buddhists, many of us. So if you are a Buddhist practitioner, then you have to believe in things coming as a result of interdependence. So social media is an interdependent creation of you and the tech giant, and also now government is involved in between. So therefore, what we need to do is, on your part, as many of us highlighted here, you have to be equipped with the values and the wisdom to be able to discern what is good and bad. On the technology providers' part, they should also be guided by the same values. And the third thing is the local government, which is the national government of Bhutan, as well as the global governance under the UN leadership. We have the digital compact and all this. We will have to actually think about this very carefully and come up with the right regulations, not to kill the industry, but also not to lead us into the undesirable path of all the social ills that Sonam just highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
So in that, you also have an unlimited role to play, both at local, national, as well as international level.
Thank you, Mr. Chenchu. I got the signal that is the end of our session. Just GNI is gross national income, so just for the students when he was talking about GNI per capita. I think we probably I might just end it at that, and then we have our MC giving the concluding thoughts for this, but thank you very much. The fact that we went over time is a good indication that this was a good panel discussion and a lot was shared. But thank you all very much for your time and engagement.
Thank you to our moderator and our panelists for deepening our understanding of how cooperation can transcend boundaries, agencies, and organizations in a world often divided. This dialogue has fostered a collective pathway for a harmonious future, not only for Bhutan, but abroad. As we bring this remarkable event to a close, on behalf of UNDP, I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to our chief guest, distinguished guests and speakers, online viewers, and a very special thanks to our dear students from the Royal Academy, Kedu College of Business Studies, Kesar Gyalpo University of Medical Science, Gyalpo College of Information and Technology, and Paro College of Education. Human development, by definition, is forward-looking, and our young people here have the furthest to look forward. I have no doubt that the conversations that we have had today will go a long way in contributing towards the advancement of human development. Thank you once again for your presence, your passion, and your partnership. Tashidelek. To our dear students, we would like to request you to stay back for a group photo. Thank you so much.
Bhutan jakar yuzong di turab chudubi na duchen ngawa chuge gi tonse kyunken pima karbo gi yonzin ngagi onchu gi lunten da ti thabja kap ji phudi tato zong yusi sago na chasa zijimle densa di sanne dikha chatap nano zongji di shacho zongka tsugi tenlu sunchob gi tewachi imbikha miwa dugel tamba gongsa uge wanchu chogi junechi in zongji dina yamsen chengi khecho chibdi desi thirab jiba gese tenzi rabgegi chilo chitong turja gepchu cha sumlu zong saje namda de sane dikha chukyem bi tabgi pansel nale dupchu bombe ten namidi tatoi panaya zongi julu nyamsen cheto tobe jeni yop in zongji digi tsenlu yugel zong ze shugomidi chilo chitong dunja chuji techika pyumada soyulgi machenji pomtalu themda pelden dubi chuchongi thuda nibaletin male gekhap thobagi matse telesu pyuma dulu wani mep sondi yobleten ime tare zongji di chagar rabdegi tujungi juneda pomtan zongkha dachongi yisatewabe chudo yubikha chiri duge khabda lakbardu pomta dejibi mise tsugi tenlu cha tsesegi ten tso jibe zethong kido yup in